This is Cassel from Creation Cassel. In this video, I will show you how you can use the Fringe Picture Tubes for PaintShop Pro. The Fringe Picture Tubes are unique tubes that will add strands of wool on any edge. So let's create one using, for example, the blue fringe. Using the settings as default, you simply draw wherever you want the fringes to go. You will notice that the fringe will not be exactly at the point where you click. There will be a little bit of a difference. So that way it will be overlapping whatever edge you want. So if, for example, you have a straight edge, let's flood fill this with a blue. And now adding a new raster layer, I will apply the fringe on the edge. So I can draw with my mouse just like this. If I want to be more precise, I can use the shift key trick. So I would click on one end, hold the shift key, click at the other end, and it will be placed. You'll notice that the spacing of each strand is not exactly even, and that is normal because the placement mode is random. If I wanted to create it very evenly spaced, I could change the setting to continuous, and I could do the same thing, and you would see how they are very even. So it will depend on the project you are trying to create. Using the setting at random will make it more interesting. The step is also set by default. The wider you go, the more variation there will be between the strands. So some will be very close, some will be much further apart. But again, that will depend on your project. So let's get them back on the same default setting. The scale, also, you can create your fringe at the length that is set by default, which is about 1000 pixels in height. So for a typical resolution of 300 pixels per inch, that would make for 3 inches. But you can obviously reduce that scale to make for smaller fringe. Notice that if you change the scale, not only the length will be changed, but the width and the thickness of each strand will also be changed. This means that if you prefer to have shorter fringe, you might want to use it at the regular length, but move it below your surface and simply move it up. And now you have a shorter fringe. Now what if you want to place your fringe along a scalloped edge? That is fine too. So let's create a different image. And I can create my fringe using the ellipse tool. So I will create an ellipse, and the color really doesn't matter. It's only going to be for visibility, and I'm going to put a width of 5 just so I can see better. And I can create the edge of my scallop like this. Let's zoom in a bit so I can see. Now I can right click on it and convert it to a path. And I want to show the nodes. And here I have the node on top. I will right click, edit. Now I will change to the pen tool. With the edit mode, I will right click on that node, edit, and I can delete this node. I could just hit the delete key too. And now I have the bottom part of my scallop. So now in the layer palette, I can right click and duplicate. And let's pull up, like open all those vector layers. I'll move my object layer into the same vector. So I'll have my two objects. One of them using my move tool. Oops. So one of them using the pen tool. I can just grab and move to the side. So I have two scallops. Now I can right click on my layer, duplicate, and I'll have four. So I can move them all together. And using again the pen tool, I can move here. And this one, I'm not sure where it is. Okay, so this one might be a duplicate. Yes, this is a duplicate here. And I can move it further. So now I have my four scallops together. And what I can do is use the vector tube script that will place my tube along this vector path. Just to make sure that I'm okay with the size, I'll just activate a raster layer, activate my picture tube, and see if that's the length I want. So I find that my scallops are a little bit low. So what I'll do is I'll move, oops, I'll activate this vector and I'll move, or try to move, my vector path higher so I'll have more room for my fringe. Now I have to activate all the objects. Activating the layer on top is not enough, so I will activate this object, hold the shift key, and activate, or yeah, all four of them. And I will simply run the vector tube with my tube set the way I want. And it will place the fringe along that path. So what I can do also is, maybe I want to change the size and the color. So maybe I will add some red. This one is red. And I'll make it slightly smaller. Also, it will be a bit thinner. So I will reactivate my four ellipse path and run the vector tube again. So as it created it below the first one I did, I can just move it up and I have another fringe. Just for the fun of it, let's try to add a yellow fringe, and this time I'll go with 50%. Again, I will activate my four shapes and run the picture tube script. And since it's created below, I'll just move it on top. And I do have 3 layers of fringe. Now, using this shape that was in a vector, I can right click and convert it to a raster. And I'll hide the fringes for now. I can simply get my selection tool, select a rectangle that I can move. And maybe I can fill it with blue on the same layer. And zooming in, I can deselect and now use my magic wand and select the area inside. If I end up selecting the outside, it's because I did not check the contiguous. So I'll delete or deselect. Select inside here. Holding my shift key, I select the other one. The next one. And I think this one didn't close the path completely. Exactly. So in that case, I can use my brush and close the path here. Or I can use my selection tool, going really close, and flood fill with that little blue. And now everything could be selected. Another way I can go around is select everything on the outside and invert the selection. And now I can flood fill with the blue, or I can use a gray, or I can use anything else that I have. I can use it as a template to replace by something else. And then I have my fringes. Of course, I can tweak them a bit, move the yellow one so it doesn't show the blue one under. Really, it's up to you. And if you don't want to have the top visible, well, you could have also placed another kind of tube. For example, the sequins. And you could have placed, let's say, red sequins along the path. Right now I can't do it because I already converted my vector path into a raster, but you could have applied the exact same effect using the vector tube and the sequins. So if I was to add a new raster layer, I could have some sequins. And now, of course, doing it manually is not as precise. Or another alternative would have been to use the wool tubes and use, for example, the red. And this would perfectly match also. Again, since it's a tube, you could have placed it with the vector tube script for a more accurate placement. And then you just time to add shadows and various effects to your liking, and you're done using the fringe tubes. It's now time for you to play with your own fringes. Have fun!